You could actually see the porosity, you could see the delaminations, you could see all the voids.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the most shocking and disturbing pieces of information revealed in Titan, the OceanGate submersible disaster, on Netflix.
With 100% certainty, that sub could not go freezing. It's critical to keep the water out.
Mission specialists.
We have clients that are Titanic enthusiasts, which we refer to as Titaniacs.
A lot of people have wondered how OceanGate was allowed to operate by charging people for tickets to the Titanic in an uncertified, unclassed vessel that, because of its lack of flag, was also technically unclaimed by any country.
A lot of our mission specialists are also space people. It differs in a significant way in that we actively seek the involvement of the mission specialists who come out with us.
The big loophole was, as Rob McCallum explains, the mission specialists. This was a piece of jargon OceanGate used to describe its paying customers, giving them jobs to do, including bolting the submersible shut and other key parts of the process, to argue that they weren't civilians and no rules were being broken.
The term mission specialist is a workaround. There are some rules about operating vessels at sea. Those rules differ depending on whether you are a crew member or you're a paying passenger.
It's chilling to hear various people describe how, from the beginning, Stockton Rush built OceanGate to avoid regulation at every turn.
Stockton was trying to confuse that, insisting that nobody was ever referred to as a passenger.
Hull tests.
Yeah, she settles down, but that's a lot of events.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Okay.
As we all know by now, the problem with Titan was that its hull was made of carbon fiber, and nowhere near enough tests were done to prove that carbon fiber was going to be a reliable and resilient enough material for deep ocean exploration.
Oh, there's, yeah, something implode, explode. Wow. Okay.
But Netflix has footage of the few tests that were carried out on the smaller test versions of the hull, all of which failed catastrophically.
So the good news is we started to see evidence of failure before it happened, which is one of the test objectives.
They were working with Boeing at the time, and Boeing conducted an analysis of the failed hull and warned OceanGate outright not to do this, and that the hull just wasn't up to scratch. After this, OceanGate went totally independent, using Boeing's designs to continue on its doomed path alone.
I would say that was it.
Should we stop now?
Yeah, I think so.
Andrea Doria.
We're too down, we're too far down.
There's debris all around us.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's a shot right out here.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I'm just saying.
The SS Andrea Doria is another famous shipwreck in the North Atlantic and is relatively popular with experienced divers and submersibles because of its shallow depth. It's only 160 feet below the surface versus the 12,500 feet of the Titanic. Rush took Titan, then named Cyclops, for a test drive at the Andrea Doria, but even this went wrong. He insisted on piloting himself, despite David Lockidge being more experienced.
He came down, drove forward 3 meters away from the bow. Basically, he brought us into a debris field.
He got them stuck in a debris field and then nearly crashed the sub into the bow of the ship. It was up to Lockidge to take command and pilot the sub to safety. The incident led to a permanent falling out between Rush and Lockidge.
He brought us in to the starboard side and jammed us in underneath the bow. So he had us jammed good and proper. I said to him, please don't do anything, just give me the controller.
David Lockridge's tests.
So Stockton said to me, okay, I want you to go out there and carry out an inspection of the Titan.
For a while, David Lockidge, a submersible pilot, was OceanGate's director of marine operations. But after the Andrea Doria incident, Lockidge was asked to conduct a full evaluation of the sub. He did as asked, carrying out many of his own tests, most of which the sub failed, and then sent a detailed report to Rush.
The goal for this document for me is the safety of anybody that goes in there, including you.
But as discussed, Rush already wasn't happy with Lockidge and used these tests as an excuse to fire him. Netflix has recordings of the meetings in which Rush told Lockidge to leave, including some other employees pleading with Rush to keep Lockidge because his experience was invaluable.
Why test something with people in it? I don't understand that. To me, it was just sheer arrogance.
Afterwards, Rush announced that the company accountant, Bonnie Carl, was going to be the new pilot. She quickly quit.
And I just remember thinking, what is happening? Like, are you nuts? I'm an accountant.
Culture of silence.
I had to make sure that nobody spoke up. I worked for somebody that is probably borderline clinical psychopath, but definitely a narcissist.
Former Director of Engineering Tony Nissen was another ex-OceanGate employee who spoke to Netflix, discussing how things changed at the company following the dismissal of Lockidge. He said that Rush told him explicitly that he was going to ruin Lockridge's life for trying to sabotage the company.
That day, Stockton told me it would be nothing for him to spend $50,000 to ruin somebody's life.
Now the collaborative atmosphere was gone, with the engineering department eventually made up almost entirely of young, inexperienced recent graduates too afraid to tell Rush that he was wrong. Nissen himself eventually left OceanGate too, after being constantly overruled by Rush, who adamantly refused to listen to criticism of Titan.
It's culture that caused this to happen. It's culture that killed the people. 100%.
The crack.
At any point within those emails, were you made aware that a crack was identified in the hull?
During one of Titan's test drives, loud popping noises again were a cause for concern, indicating that the carbon fiber hull was getting weaker and weaker with every expedition. But at one point, a huge crack was found, which was examined and finally necessitated a new hull being made.
That was not public knowledge, and they said, do not say anything to anyone.
Tony Nissen, the engineering lead, was then chewed out by Stockton Rush for not knowing about the defect, only for Nissen to point out that he'd already warned Rush about it. Huge numbers of engineers were fired over this and replaced with people with even less experience. Nissen didn't whistleblow out of fear of ending up like David Lockidge.
I wasn't going to fight him. I wasn't going to go to the board because Stockton stated clearly how he likes to ruin a life.
OSHA.
And as you can imagine, a lawsuit is no easy thing, especially when you're being threatened with theft, fraud.
So what exactly did happen to Lockidge? His presence in the documentary doesn't end there. And if you watched the hearings, you'll have seen him testify. He actually filed with OSHA, the U.S.'s industrial health and safety regulator, blowing the whistle on OceanGate and how dangerous it was.
Unfortunately, whistleblowers, they're not protected from retaliation. We're not like the, witness protection program or something like that. What we do is investigate.
But one thing after another went wrong. OceanGate sued Lockidge for breach of contract and retaliation. And after spending all of he and his wife's savings trying to fight OceanGate in federal court, he was eventually forced to withdraw his complaint. He ran out of money, and the OSHA investigation put him on the back burner.
Please note that at this time, I have 11 cases that are older than yours. I will be in contact with you as needed. Thank you for your patience.
The employees knew. It wasn't just David Lockidge and Tony Nissen who knew, with OceanGate, that something terrible was going to happen with Titan.
Stockton, he had said, we want you to be a female young pilot. We want you to be the face of the company.
Featured heavily in the documentary is Emily Hammermeister, who speaks on behalf of many other lower-level employees who all realized that something like this was going to happen with Titan. They bore witness to the test hole's failures. They heard the popping sounds, and many of them did raise their concerns with Rush, only to be dismissed.
I did speak up. A lot of people did. They discussed their concerns. They're like, what do you mean? This failed. You're gonna keep going?
She and some others outright refused to bolt the sub closed going forward, which led to an ultimatum from Rush. Subsequently, many of those employees were fired or left, fearing the worst for OceanGate's passengers.
And I was not going to bolt anyone inside of that sub. And that was something that a lot of my coworkers at the time agreed on, and none of which stayed with the company much longer.
Winter in Newfoundland.
What we really wanted to do was bring the sub back, at least to Everett, and pull the insert and look at the inside of the hull to see if there were any cracks.
After Dive 80, the one that suffered a loud acoustic event that made Titan a ticking time bomb, winter rolled in, and operations had to cease for the season. But Stockton didn't want to pay to have Titan transported from St. John's, Newfoundland, all the way back to OceanGate's headquarters in Washington, on the opposite side of North America. So he just left Titan sitting outside in a parking lot in Newfoundland for months, freezing and thawing over and over again in sub-zero temperatures.
Once we build this, it cannot be stored in sub-zero. It cannot go freezing.
Aside from this obviously making the hull even more fragile, it also prevented engineers from dismantling the sub to see what made the loud noise, so they couldn't repair or replace anything. It imploded on the very next dive.
If water gets in there and you sit it out in freezing conditions and that water expands, it breaks fibers.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Liability.
From the very first time I talked with people when the sub was still missing, there were sources who were saying to me they had left because of Stockton.
The Netflix documentary asks a valuable question that investigations have also been trying to determine. Is anybody other than Stockton Rush responsible for the Titan implosion?
There was one who actually wouldn't really fully open up to me until we all learned that Stockton had died.
Only the family of P.H. Nargeolet have so far brought a lawsuit against OceanGate, and no criminal charges have been made.
The wrongful death suit seeks $50 million and claims those on board were terrified as they realized what was happening.
It's clear from the interviews that many of the people involved feel like they bear some responsibility, but equally, it seems like all decisions started and ended with Rush, and charges can't be filed against him because obviously he also perished in the implosion. It may take many more years for the investigations to be completed and to see the outcome of the lawsuit.
Everybody says, oh, it'll just be Stockton's wife. That's the only person you could be liable for. Nonsense. Those are the ones that are left with the aftermath. Those are the ones that are left to answer to the accident investigation team.
Let us know in the comments what you thought of Netflix's latest documentary.
It's not going to just go to 3100 and be perfect, and at 3200 it all goes away. That ain't going to happen, and I will put my life on the line.